stood at the front lines of law, leadership, and public service. From the courtroom to the classroom, Attorney Karen Jimeno brings sharp legal insight, academic excellence, and a voice that has guided national conversations. Attorney Mike Toledo, a seasoned public affairs strategist and legal mind with years in media, corporate leadership, and government reform. Together, they bring law to life with experience, integrity, and the courage to ask hard questions. Two minds shaped by the law. Two voices trusted in and out of the courtroom. This is Abugado.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of Abugado, where legal minds engage in sharp, principled dialogue on today's vital constitutional issues. I'm Attorney Mike Toledo.
And I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno. Tonight we tackle a question that strikes at the very heart of constitutional checks and balances. Here's the proposition we're putting to the test tonight.
The ultimate constitutional check on those who hold the highest power. In theory, it protects the republic. In practice, it tests it. Under the 1987 Constitution, the House of Representatives initiates. The Senate tries, and both are expected to act with integrity, independence, and in accordance with law. But what happens when procedure becomes the battleground? Can one chamber question how the other performs its duty? Some argue that these tensions threaten the system of checks and balances. Others say they are part of a dynamic process meant to uphold accountability as we confront questions of power, procedure, and principle. We ask, does Congress' handling of the impeachment process comply with constitutional standards and principles of due process?
Joining us tonight is Attorney Neri Colmenares, former House Senior Deputy Minority Leader, constitutional lawyer, and seasoned impeachment prosecutor. A respected lecturer in constitutional law and chairperson of Bayan Muna. He is one of the groups that filed the impeachment complaint and has been one of the most vocal advocates for pushing the case forward. Attorney Colmenares brings deep experience and insights into the workings of impeachment and constitutional due process.
Well, partner, indeed, we're lucky to have former Congressman Neri Colmenares, definitely one of the respected legal minds in Congress, and also we all come from the same law school.
And we all underwent impeachment.
Exactly.
So I was in the defense when Congressman Neri was in the prosecution. We were on opposite sides
during the impeachment of Chief Justice Corona.
Yes.
In my case naman, if I may share with our audience, I was then the spokesman during the impeachment trial of President Estrada. Of course, in 2000, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah,
so,
I wasn't born yet.
Yeah.
But you kind of heard about it.
Yes. So in a sense, all of us here have had experience with impeachment proceedings. So let's get to the task at hand.
Yes.
One of the issues that's always been raised is, did the House comply with the constitutional requirements in initiating this impeachment complaint against VP Sara?
Well, if you look at the Constitution, Attorney Mike, it says that the House, of course, has the sole power to initiate an impeachment complaint. And either it goes through the committee or the House, one-third members can, of course, transmit the articles of impeachment directly. So that's basically it. I know the issues raised by the Vice President that when the complaint was filed, the Secretary General did not transmit it to the Speaker of the House.
But which one are we talking about? Because there were four impeachment complaints filed, and it was the fourth verified complaint that they endorsed to the Senate.
Yes. Yeah, the first three, of course. The first was filed sometime, I forgot when, but we were the second impeachment complaint, and then there was a third. And the fourth impeachment complaint sort of digested everything.
I think it was consolidated.
Yes.
The three impeachment complaints were consolidated, and that was what was filed.
Yes.
And did that comply?
Oh, yes, of course, yes. The articles of impeachment was filed by more than one-third. And definitely, if it gathers one-third signature, that's the only requirement.
Yeah.
And,
In this case, if it gathers 1/3 of the signatures of the House of Representatives, there's no need to conduct something similar to a preliminary investigation.
No, no need. In fact, if you remember the Estrada impeachment complaint, it was a prayer by the Speaker of the House reading the prayer and then saying that 1/3, the impeachment articles of impeachment transmitted to the House right after his prayer. So everybody was surprised.
I
and
remember
it was,
that.
It was transmitted to the Senate. So the procedure there is not really detailed, but as long as you have 1/3 of the members and you transmit it to the Senate, that's it.
And in this case, partner, it was even more than 1/3. We are looking at 215 congressmen who
Yes,
actually
yes.
signed the articles of impeachment. Because as the Constitution provides, if it is the House that initiates it by virtue of 1/3,
Yes.
and in this case more than 1/3 majority,
Yes.
signed the impeachment complaints, that is already, in essence, the articles of impeachment.
is correct.
That should therefore then transmitted to the Senate.
Yes.
Okay.
That
But
is
another
correct.
question I have when it comes to complying with the requirements of the Constitution, did the endorsement of the 4th impeachment complaint violate the 1-year ban rule under the Constitution?
No, because the Constitution says no impeachment complaint shall be initiated against that particular public official more than once a year, of course. And in this case, there was no other articles of impeachment that was initiated, where there were 3 previous impeachment complaints, including ours, but they were not initiated. The Supreme Court has defined it clearly. Initiation is the referral to the Justice Committee. And there was no Justice Committee, there was no referral, there was even no Justice Committee hearing for that matter. So it was not referred to a Justice Committee, rather directly, the 1/3 signed, at least 1/3 signed the articles of impeachment.
Because
So-
there
Yeah.
are 2 ways that you can initiate an impeachment. One is a citizen can
Yes.
do that, but you need, of course, the
endorsement
endorsement
of
of a
one member.
congressman, of one member. Then you go to the 1/3 again, or directly, all the congressmen, 215 of them, filed the articles of impeachment.
Yes.
That is why when it was transmitted partner to the Senate, the first issue that really came out was, okay, now that it has been submitted, the Senate should have acted immediately on that impeachment, the articles of impeachment, because the Constitution was very clear. Once the House refers it to the Senate, then the Senate said forthwith,
Yes.
immediately act on it.
Yes, that's what we're pressing the Senate for. So they did not act on it, and they found excuses like, oh, why did you transmit it during recess? I mean, there's no constitutional provision that says, oh, you should transmit it to the Senate 1 month before recess. There's none. Secondly, what is the fault of the victims here? The House and the Senate are sort of bickering with each other, but that's not our problem. We, as the public, we have an accountability issue. We want the confidential funds, for example, explained. So whenever the House transmitted it, for us, Senate, it's there with you now. The ball is in your court. Try it, because it's about accountability of this impeachment.
Well, since we're first talking about how the House handled this impeachment or the 4 impeachment complaints, what about the assertion of Senate that the House of Representatives sat on the impeachment complaints for a long time, and then suddenly, when it came to Senate, minamadali daw sila?
Well, actually, they shouldn't blame the House. Kami mismo, the public, minamadali sila. Because we want the 125 million pesos confidential funds of Sara Duterte, for example, explained. And for us, there is no constitutional provision that you can transmit to the Senate in giving the Senate time before recess. No, there's none of that. In fact, the rules even of the Senate are clear. Once the articles of impeachment are transmitted, you should convene the trial court. So I don't see any reason for this debate between the House. Why now? Why not before? Especially since that's not our problem. Why should we get blamed? Why should the Filipino people suffer just because the Senate think the House transmitted it late? And secondly, it's not really late because they could have convened the impeachment court right there and then. We have always argued that the legislative processes of the Senate, it does not bind the impeachment court. In fact, the impeachment court has a life of its own. with or without the Senate legislative calendar.
I think, partner, that's something na siguro i-explain talaga natin sa ating mga kababayan na
Yes.
nakikinig. And I'm glad na minention mo yan. No? Kasi ang Senado, sa ngayon, may legislative functions.
Yeah.
Kailangan nang malaman ng ating mga kababayan na pag naging impeachment court na ang Senado, ibang function na yon.
Yes.
Totally different.
The impeachment
Same-
court itself is a
Correct,
continuing body,
correct.
not
And-
like the legislative
Yes.
body. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it may be the same people, parehong tao, same personalities, but they are already sitting as senator judges in an impeachment court.
Correct.
Kaya nga, they have to take a solemn oath. Talaga makikita mo naman sa oath na sinabi nila during that time, and that they will abide by the rules of the impeachment and et cetera, et cetera. Kaya siguro kailangan malinawan talaga ng ating mga kababayan na pag nag-impeachment court na yan, hindi sila exercising legislative functions. Iba yon.
Yes, because the legislature, of course, tagagawa sila ng batas. Dito, hindi sila gagawa ng batas eh. They will try an impeachable official, whether that impeachable official is fit to continue office or not. And there is a sort of a decision here where ang sabihin nila, you're not fit, therefore removed ka from office, or if they acquit, of course. So iba ito eh. Hindi ito kapareho. In fact, the Senate rules itself says that once the impeachment court is convened, it will hold sessions at a certain period, and the legislative session shall be suspended. Meaning to say, iniiba nila na pag may impeachment trial, ang legislative session isuspend mo yan. At ito nakalagay sa rules. Legislative sessions, if any, shall be suspended. Ibig sabihin, pwede palang walang legislative session ang Senate, ibig sabihin recess, tuloy lang yung impeachment
It
court.
takes precedence.
Yeah.
The
But,
impeachment will
I'll-
take precedence.
I'll ask you guys to take a step back because after this section, we will really concentrate on
The
Senate
Senate,
as an
yes.
impeachment court.
Okay.
But when we look at the House, in terms of how this impeachment also originated, were there any irregularities in the way that the House ended up eventually with an impeachment complaint? In a sense that prior to this, there were several committee hearings that were conducted by Congress in the guise of congressional inquiries. But as early as then, Vice President Sara was already saying that ang plano naman talaga dito ay impeachment against me. So was the House of Representatives used as a way to fish for evidence against the Vice President?
Well, I don't know what the purpose of the House hearings were. But it came to light because of the House hearings. Remember, it was a member of the Makabayan Bloc who actually mentioned the 125 million pesos na confidential fund. And so we were saying na dapat imbestigahan. So the House investigated. Will the evidence gained from an official congressional investigation be used in the Senate impeachment trial? Of course, yes. I mean, that's how the cookie crumbles here. Because there was an investigation at hindi naman pwedeng maimbestigasyon. Nalaman na nagdispalko ka o may ninakaw ka. Tapos precluded na ang House from filing an impeachment case against you because it underwent a congressional hearing. No. The more reason that there should be an impeachment case because a congressional investigation ferreted out the evidence. We don't care about the purpose, the motives of some members of the House. That's their own motive. But for us, the motive here is very simple. May public funds binigay sa'yo. Pinapa-account lang naman eh. Explain mo nga. Hindi mo ina-explain o di-impeach ka.
Pero wala bang prejudicial question involved here, considering that when we were talking about confidential funds, then this is subject to the Commission on Audit,
Yes.
their findings, and therefore we should wait for the findings of the COA before the impeachment complaint makes that as one of the articles of impeachment.
That's an evidentiary rule. Maybe the defense would say that in the trial, oh, you don't have a COA findings here, so what's the, what's the weight of your evidence? But that's not even an issue of admissibility. The issue here is just maybe how heavy or how light is your evidence. There's no need to wait for that. Secondly, we don't know if COA, audited the confidential funds. But with or without a COA audit, if there is a reason to file the impeachment complaint, in which case the mere failure to account for public funds entrusted to you is actually a criminal offense under the revised penal code. Any public official with custody of public funds, and when you're made to account, you don't account for it, that's a criminal act. So you can actually be charged in court for that. So, the fact is, the Vice President failed or refused to answer the questions kung saan niya dinala ang 612 million. And for us, that's a legitimate cause of action on the part of the complainants to go to the Senate, in this case, for an impeachment. Kung hindi lang siya impeachable, baka sa ombudsman na siya dinala eh. Kasi that's really major, $500 million pesos.
Bakit hindi na lang nga ba sa ombudsman? Because the immunity from suit in the Constitution, for me, it's very clear it applies to the President, but I know it's a gray area.
It's a gray area.
As to whether that applies to the Vice President.
Yes, it's a gray area. For a long period of time, people believe that if you're an impeachable official, you cannot be charged in court. And the only exception was created by President Duterte himself when he filed the case against Leni Robredo. So ngayon, kung mukhang na-break na ang ganong doktrina, kumbaga. But we don't know. It's a gray area. Is an impeachable official subject to an ombudsman case? There was an investigation, a Supreme Court case before na the ombudsman may investigate.
Yes.
But,
I think that's a good point that you raised, no? And siguro para na rin ma-inform ating mga tagapakinig, no, taong bayan. Dahil nga yung impeachment, 'di ba, ang nature lang impeachment is really just to remove you from office.
Correct.
That's the only purpose. But once you remove, hindi ibig sabihin, hindi ka pwede kasuhan criminally or administratively. Pwede. Kaya nga siguro dito, hindi siya finailan ng ombudsman, pwede naman.
Yes.
But at the end of the day, because as we know, impeachment comes from the American system. We adopted that.
Yes.
So nakita nila na, paano ba natin pwede tanggalin itong isang leader na in our opinion is no longer fit for office for the following reasons, di ba? Kaya di sabi, pwede, ito na lang, impeachment.
Yes.
Immunity from suit, kasi nga, presidente ka, pero pag nagkasala ka, any of the items mentioned there in the Constitution, then you can be impeached. But pag na-impeach ka naman at natanggal, di ba, pwede ka rin kasuhan ng kriminal. Hindi pa tapos, just because na-impeach ka, hindi big sabihin off the hook ka na. Tama ba?
Yes, tama yun. In fact, I don't know if Karen remembers this. One of the big issues, magkalabang kami ni Karen noon, but we're very good friends after that. One of the big issues there, what is the quantum of evidence in an impeachment trial? So of course, the defense, sila Karen, is arguing is proof beyond reasonable doubt, which is a criminal proceeding.
Yes.
Understandably.
Yeah.
Understandably. Yung sa kami naman, a preponderance of evidence, administrative lang yun.
Yeah.
So, ang argument ko lang doon, in an impeachment case, nobody goes to prison. So, why should we use the criminal quantum of evidence? In an impeachment case, this is not even a civil case. Wala namang bubayad ng danyos pervicios dito or damages. This is a mere administrative case na sinasampa mo sa isang ordinaryong government official. Kaya lang, because impeachable official ito, normally civil service lang yan for, di ba, for kung anumang serious misconduct mo. Pero dahil impeachable official siya, they are gods. Karen and Mike, they are gods because unlike ordinary government employees, they cannot be removed from office unless convicted. Diba? Parang unfair yan bakit pag ordinaryo ka? But that's the Constitution. So anyway, we just wanted to go to the impeachment court for now because the quantum of evidence there, just the removal muna. Tsaka na lang siya kasuhan.
So right now, for this specific impeachment trial, what are we expecting? That the burden of proof is only preponderance of evidence?
Yun nga eh.
Yan ang up to now, hindi pa rin clear.
Kasi if I may, before you answer, no, di ba at the end of the day, impeachment, malakas man yung kaso or mahina, it's a political exercise.
Yes.
In other words, maski na preponderance of evidence, maski na proof beyond reasonable doubt, pag ang mga senador sabi nila, hindi, we don't like you eh. Di ba? At the end of the day.
But so, even more than that, Attorney Mike and Congressman Neri, we're talking about senator judges who are not lawyers, most of them.
Yes.
So usually when you go to a court, you have the confidence as counsel that the person deciding the case would have an appreciation as to how to weigh the evidence, depending on the standard of proof required. But in this case, if you have senator judges that are non-lawyers, how can you rely on their ability?
Yes, that's something. Of course, it's a political exercise. Although I've always insisted that it's not purely political. There are basic standards of justice and due process that is required there. But in the case of Chief Justice Corona, the last day of the trial, maybe we can review the transcripts later. Distinctly, Senator and I was really so relieved when he said, "I've read the book of Berger." He is a noted impeachment lawyer, author. And I said, oh my God, we're going to win the preponderance of evidence. Because I know Berger, I've read the book, is with its preponderance of, it's a mere administrative case, whether a government employee is, removed or not, or whatever the decision is. In this case, that's what Senate President Enrile said. This is a mere administrative case, and preponderance of evidence is the quantum of evidence. So that resolved the case for us, but Karen is also right. In the end, how would a non-lawyer judge or senator think what is preponderance and what is substantial and what is proof beyond reasonable? Of course.
Don't they, the senator judges, have a caucus and meet to discuss? Because I saw the rules of the impeachment. We studied it before we issued some statements. And then, don't they also, let's say, discuss, okay, as for the non-lawyers, ito ang preponderance of evidence. For ito naman ang proof beyond reasonable doubt. Hindi na pinag-uusapan yun, at least to guide the non-lawyers.
Yes, well, I'm sure they do that, but it took us so many months in law school to learn really what is the difference.
And for judges, they sit in courts for a long time. But for even for them to be appointed as judges, their credentials have to reflect, right? Like a track record of being very familiar with the law. So it is very difficult. Even for me, if I were asked to decide a case, diba?
Yes.
In fact, if I may add, in the end, the closing argument of the prosecution was conducted by Congressman
Rudy Fariñas. I still remember that. Yeah.
And I don't know, Karen, if you still remember this.
Yeah.
His first word was something that really shocked many and, caught the attention of many. His first word was palusot.
Yes. And that was his constant, basically it was the dialogue for his whole closing argument.
Yes.
Hindi siya legal.
Hindi
The
legal.
audience to me was the people.
And so, palusot is not, is it proof beyond reasonable doubt or preponderance? No, it's just a message by Congressman Fariñas, was very articulate, by the way, to deliver the message. So in the end, it depends on how the prosecution and the defense handles it. But Karen is right, Attorney Karen is right. The senator judges are not lawyers, so maybe they won't really understand the difference between substantial
So,
and
going back to,
Kaya nga part na nangyayari, going back, that's why impeachment per se is really more of a political process. And at the same time, also, it's really an appeal to the sovereign, to the taong bayan.
Yes.
Na ito ang mga kasalanan niya. Whether or not it can be proven reasonable doubt or preponderance of evidence, ito ang kasalanan niya. Kaya nga nung panahon nung impeachment process ni Presidente Erap, at that time, I actually recommended to the Defense Counsel to please have yourself interviewed. Because ang galing ni Joker Arroyo Every time after they make a presentation of the alleged crimes committed by then President Estrada, he would immediately go out on TV and tell the people, oh, this is what happened inside. And so for months, or for weeks rather, maybe 2-3 months, all the people saw, the public saw, were the alleged crimes and sins committed by then President Estrada. Because the lawyers at the time, very good lawyers, but they said, no, we will fight this in the impeachment court, not in the court of public opinion. But that's not how it works in impeachment. That's why I even suggested wag i-televise, partner, at that time. But I was overruled. Now, I do not know what they'll be doing here kung ite-televise. Malamang ite-televise, no? So,
I think
probably.
it will be.
Yeah,
Yes,
because
probably.
meron spokespersons lahat Kahit for the first time, even the Senate Impeachment Court has a spokesperson.
yes.
So, mukhang talagang ready for TV.
The court itself may spokesperson.
Yes.
And you were the spokesperson for the
defense. Yeah,
And
but for the
who was
first time, meron prosecution normally
Yes,
meron
yes.
and defense, and even during your time,
Yes.
I think Senate President Cheese Escudero used to be one of the spokespersons of the prosecution, from what I remember, during the era of
I
impeachment.
think so, yes.
In the he was one, nasa
one.
prosecution sila at that time.
So, yeah, I think they're ready for TV.
Yes, this is a public interest. So the
Telenovela.
impeachment court
Yeah.
will be criticized by the people if it's not televised.
Yeah. But going back to the House then, if you're saying that there are no irregularities in the way that the House originated and also went through the procedure for filing this impeachment, what do you say with respect to the remand order of the Senate? Will the House of Representatives, or should they comply with what the Senate requested, meaning the certification that the House of Representatives complied with the one-year bar rule and the ratification
Of the
by the 20th Congress?
Well, the remand, the return or so, I don't know the term now because they keep on changing it. The remand motion approved is actually will delay the impeachment trial. So in that sense, it violates the forthwith thing. Secondly, it's not even practical because once the prosecution is there, you can ask them, did you violate the Constitution when you filed this or transmitted this? Are you willing to prosecute this case? Which is, of course, no judge has ever asked a party, and are you willing to prosecute? Kaya nga ako nag-file judge eh. Tapos tatanungin mo ako if I'm willing, di ba? But in any case, that for us, that is killer yung remanda. That's a killer, impeachment killer. Why? The first question was,
novel.
Constitutional ba ito o hindi? Tingin nyo ba? But the second question is addressed to the 20th Congress. So the 19th Congress cannot answer it. So we're going to have to wait for August, right? So that's the killer provision there. So yung remand nyo, going back again to Chief Justice Corona, when the first few sessions of the trial, that was precisely what was raised. The issues of is this constitutional, violated the due process rights of the respondent. In that case, however, it wasn't one of the senator judges who raised it. It was Justice Cuevas, the defense, which rightfully, I mean, he needs to raise it because that's a question. But it was settled there and then because the prosecution answered it. Pwede namang sagutin ng prosecution yan, but nyo i-remand. So kaya the public is suspecting, you want to delay this kasi pag darating na sila sa June 11 ang prosecution So why even bother to remand it? Tayo pagdating nila sa June 11, then you ask them the question. So did you follow the Constitution when you transmitted
Can you explain what happened in the sense that, okay, remand ng Senado, binalik, which already raises a lot of questions, di ba? Pero at the same time, nag-issue naman ng summons ang Senado.
That's the strange part because if I were the lawyer, of course, siyempre ang sasabihin ni Sara Duterte dyan, ba't ko naman sasagutin yan? Wala, ang complaint ni remand yun na So, I'm answering a complaint which you remanded it, di ba? So,
And there's a question whether the House of Representatives would even comply. I mean,
correct.
at that point, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
She can also say, why should I even answer a complaint na hindi ko naman sure kung willing pa silang i-prosecute, di ba? I'll wait for that. She can do. But I think the Senate should insist. No. That's not the issue here. We've sent you a summons. Answer it within a period of 10 days. So that's it. On June 21, Sarah's answer should be there in the Senate. And my proposal is for the House to comply immediately with the Senate motion and say it's constitutional as far as we're concerned. At least for the 19th Congress, we're willing to prosecute it. So please have a trial on June 21.
Well, as
When
a
Sarah-
member of one of the groups that filed the impeachment complaint, one of the 4 complaints, wala ba kayong balita from the House of Representatives as to whether they will comply?
No, we only see the media releases. Pero ito advice ko sa kanila, sagutin nyo na, throw the ball back to the Senate. kasi ngayon kayo pa masisi. Kaya walang impeachment ninyo kasi kinocomply But throw it back to them and say, we will be there on June 21. When the answer of Sara Duterte is there, the issues are joined, we will no longer file our reply. We go straight to trial. So,
Hindi pa pwede sabihin nila na, ay, hindi na, we don't have to do anything. Basta ang ginawa namin, following the dictates ng Constitution, ng saligang batas, we already transmitted the
Yes.
articles of impeachment.
Correct.
It's now you, the Senate, and if you follow the Constitution, dapat kayo ng kumilos, hindi na kami. Pwede
Yes.
bang sabihin yun?
Pwede. In fact, ang sabihin nila, the fact that we filed it with you, we believe it was duly filed. Constitutional. We didn't violate the Constitution. And the fact we filed it with you, it's presumed na willing kaming i-prosecute ito. So why even ask us again except to delay this? So ako, i-demand ng taong bayan, not just the House, i-demand ng taong bayan sa Senado na mag-hear na kayo sa June 21. Kasi nandiyan na yung answer eh. Pwede nyo nang simulan. Ngayon, kung mag-crossover man yan sa 28, that's another thing. By June 30, let's cross that bridge. But for now, you start on June 21 and you continue hearing the case before the June 30.
Well, I have another question. There's an existing petition in the Supreme Court
Yes.
that was filed by Vice President Sara Duterte back in February, which raised the issue of the violation of the one-year ban rule. That's a legal question.
Yes.
But since that issue is pending with the Supreme Court, can the impeachment court raise that this is a prejudicial question as to whether the trial should
No,
proceed?
they can't. No, they can't. Because the impeachment court is the sole authority to try impeachment cases. So sila ang may karapatan yan. Now, the question, of course, unless may TRO siguro, I don't think that if Supreme Court will restrain the impeachment court anyway, then, so be it. But we continue with the trial. Otherwise, Attorney Karen, what the impeachable official will always do is every time there's an impeachment, you file a case before the Supreme Court. And then you file again, and then somebody files again, and di wala ng impeachment trial. No, I don't think that it's prejudicial. The impeachment court has to try, no matter what the decision of the Supreme Court would be, and, again, cross the bridge once the Supreme Court decides, but the trial continues as of now.
Well, now that we're looking at the Senate, what is your expectation when it comes to what's going to happen next, Attorney Neri? But before you answer that question, we'll have to take a short break at the Abogado. We'll be right back. Sorry, it's a morning show. But Abogado will be right back.
That's your morning show.
Yeah. Or automatic. This is the big.
Welcome back. You are still watching Abogado. We've been unpacking the constitutional and procedural questions surrounding the impeachment of Vice President Sara Duterte. And with us is none other than former congressman and a legal luminary, if I may say, Attorney Neri Colmenares.
So, Attorney Neri, let's go back to what the Senate did here in terms of remanding, returning the articles of impeachment. Well, the question I guess I have is, isn't the Senate Impeachment Court also allowed to make their own rules? Because everyone says the impeachment process, the trial itself is sui generis. So it really doesn't follow the rules of court that we're used to as lawyers when we appear in litigation cases. So yung mga ginagawa nilang innovations right now, isn't that legally allowed?
They have the power to draft their own rules, the impeachment rules, except that it should abide by the Constitution. And for me, the remand decision is a violation in the sense that it really distracts forthwith. Because now, you'll have to wait until August. And that's not forthwith. If we've waited for 4 months, we're going to wait for another 2 to 3 months. So that's a violation in itself. Secondly, this, as I mentioned a while ago, it's not even practical because you can ask it directly. So now you've stymied the entire procedure merely by remanding it and probably giving Sara Duterte, Vice President Duterte, the excuse. You've remanded it, so, why should I answer? Yeah, so I think the Senate should now insist. Yes, we have recessed, we know, adjourned Senate, but the impeachment court is not bound by legislative calendar, so we continue doing it and have trial by June 21 if they will allow it.
Well, some Congressman Neri, some argue that the Senate has the discretion to review the sufficiency of the articles before proceeding. Do you agree or disagree with that interpretation?
I disagree because what does it mean if they want to review? They can what? Return it, dismiss it, order its amendment? No, they're supposed to try. That's what the Constitution says. convene the impeachment court, try an impeachable official. That's it. You try it. Now, if there is a defect in the complaint, let the defense raise it. Justice Cuevas and Attorney Karen, they were all very good in raising. We had a lot of problems with them during that case. From a survey point of, I think it was 60-40, 60 guilty, 40 acquit. In the end, it was 49, the survey, 49 guilty, 51 acquit. I mean, you know, they let the defense argue that. You don't need to argue it. These are lawyers, very good lawyers. Why should a certain somebody who doesn't even know? I mean, you know, let the senator judges, as we've said, they're just there to try it. They're not even lawyers. So why lawyer for somebody when you don't need to? So, yeah. If they have questions of procedures, impeachment, may defect ito, let the defense raise it.
Kaya nga,
Who are we
partner,
to?
yun exactly ang sinabi dun sa PhilCon sa statement. Diana, how come the senator judges are acting as defense counsel?
Correct.
When itong mga rin-raise daw nila, ay dapat, doon na sa trial yan. And then, i-raise na nila as defense counsel.
Yeah. Well, I guess the other question I have when we're talking about the composition of the Senate impeachment court, of course, everyone says this is a political process. And since we have senators there would be political alliances. But when it comes to those that are pro-Duterte, anti-Duterte, there have been calls for recusal, and also inhibition. But again, that decision for inhibition comes from the senator judges themselves, right? In the same way that happens in the courts.
Yes.
Pag nagpa-motion to inhibit ka sa judge, it's up to the judge to inhibit themselves,
Correct.
right? So, how does this affect the trial, Congressman Neri, in terms of the integrity of the trial?
And in relation to that very good question, can they actually inhibit?
First,
We asked for an inhibition before, nung time ni Chief Justice Corona's trial. I don't know if you remember.
I forgot that
The
now.
defense asked for the inhibition of
certain,
Senator Judge Frank Drilon.
okay. In any case, I agree with Senate President Chis Escudero here. It's, of course, the decision of the judge himself or herself. It's the first question. So, can they inhibit? That's a very good question, Attorney Mike. Because I don't know if they can inhibit. But anyway, if you ask for the recusal of 18 judges, walang quorum, then the impeachment dies. So I wouldn't even go that far.
Oo nga, no? Interesting. Kasi nga tama rin, that's going to be a technicality. Wala na namang quorum.
Kasi sa partner, di ba, ako lang, and I don't know if you agree with this, Congressman
Yes.
Neri, di ba, senator judge ka na, nag-oath ka na,
Yes.
nag-oath ka na following the provisions of the Constitution.
Yes.
Therefore, it is your responsibility to comply with your oath.
Yes.
And you cannot inhibit yourself. Hindi ba pwede nating sabihin yun?
Yes, it's a very novel, untraveled road. So, sa akin, practical na lang. Pag pina-inhibit mo yan, sino mag-i-hear? Diba? So, baka mawala ng quorum, dihado ang publiko. Kasi we will never get to know the answer to the $612 question. So,
So for you, it's important to really have the trial so that there's
Yes.
an opportunity to lay down the evidence.
yes, because the impeachment trial is, we don't know if they're going to convict or acquit. We don't know that. But at least there's a forum where the public can see, totoo ba itong si Mary Grace Piatos? Does she really exist? Tinanggap niya ba talaga ang pera na to? Para saan yan? Surveillance o para lang i-party niya? I mean, you don't know. We just need to know the answers because this come from the people. Didn't come from the senators, didn't come from the House. It came from the people. And the people have all the right to know where it went.
Okay, well, I have an extra legal question, meaning it's outside of the legal field. But then, because we're talking about a political process, whose interest is it to delay this? Because actually, I think before the Senate Impeachment Court convened, it was in the front pages that President Bongbong Marcos said he doesn't want an impeachment. So, in our experience, Congressman Neri, back in the impeachment of Chief Justice Corona, then President Benigno Aquino III, si Pinoy, was very vocal that he wanted the impeachment of
Yes.
the Chief Justice. Pero dito parang iba eh. So, is that part of the delay? Who's causing the delay? And then, or is it also strategy on the part of the prosecution that they're waiting for there to be enough senator judges that will vote to convict.
No, I don't know if they're expecting that in the next Congress, in the next Senate. But for me, the President should not intervene. We don't care about the opinion of President Marcos here. The fact is, there is an impeachment complaint by the Filipino people, and so it must be tried. Now, whose interest is this? The fact is, it benefits the Vice President. So,
Pag may delay, you mean?
Pag may delay. I mean, whose interest is it for? I don't really know, but it's, siyempre, if I were, the Vice President, I would like the delay. Because I think, this is my opinion from a biased complainant here, if trial ensues, I don't think she has a very good explanation of where at least the 125 million pesos spent in 11 days, in December at that, during holidays. I think that's a very, it's like, if I go to the ICC issue, it's like an ICC trial. If it continues, if there is an ICC trial, I don't see any evidence on the part of President Rodrigo Duterte to be presented to the court which says, wala akong kinalaman sa EJK, ha? What evidence is that? So trial for the Vice President and even President Duterte is unacceptable. Once trial sets in, I think it's a foregone conclusion, if all things are fair, that there will be a conviction, because there is no evidence, at least from my point of view, that they can present to show that they're innocent or not guilty of the charges against them.
Well,
Bilis ng time, partner,
I know.
ha? We're nearing the end of our program now.
We would like to ask you, Congressman and Eric, because this is the time that we would like to hear your reflections on the matter. Because what is at stake here is really the constitutional check and balances.
Yes.
So, what are your reflections? The past happenings these couple of weeks.
Yes, this is an issue of checks and balance in a sense, but it's not a checks and balance between the House and the Senate. It's a checks and balance between people and impeachable officials. So for me, that's the issue here. In the end, it doesn't matter whether you're pro-Duterte or pro-Marcos or pro-Lenny. It's all your money there. The 612 million, di naman yan hinati-hati. Kunin mo lang yung pera ni Robredo. No, these are all taxpayers. So it's the concern of all. Whether you're for President Duterte or President Marcos or pro-Lenny, you are concerned of someone explaining where 612 million, more than half a billion pesos went. So because it is to the interest of each and everyone, I think political affiliation should not play here. This is about public accountability and public funds. So I really hope that the Senate this time around, all this blaming and so on, stop it, because this is an issue of the Filipino people rather than an issue between the Senate and the House. Accountability must win in this issue.
Well, my final question would be, based on the impeachments that we've witnessed, that our country has gone through, what do you think needs to be changed, if any?
Oh, the impeachment trial, you mean?
The process that we have.
The process,
yeah. All the
For
gray
me,
areas, lahat
the
ng
first
mga,
thing is this, that I've always disagreed with this pure political process thing, because I say it's an accountability mechanism. Therefore, there are standards of justice here, and issues of due process. So it's not bara-bara-bay, like, I will decide because I don't like it. So that's the first thing I'd like to, sana naman, there will be changes towards this. And secondly, I don't know how you enforce this, but sana naman the senator judges will decide according to the merits of the case rather than their political affiliations, loyalties, or their electoral fortunes. Because this is not about you or your future, but this is about the Filipino people. So for me, if there are changes, because this is an impeachment proceeding, sana naman merong ganong justice to make sure that accountability to the people is ensured in an impeachment case.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think the accountability should also apply to the senator judges. And I don't know if we have enough time, but naalala ko tuloy bigla, during the impeachment of former Chief Justice Corona, after, I think it was a year and a half after, there was a privileged speech by one of the senators, if I'm not mistaken, that was Jinggoy Estrada, saying that money was given to senator judges to vote to convict It was a privileged speech after, right?
Yes, I remember
if
that.
as lawyers we could have filed for a mistrial, but that's my point.
Yes,
when it comes
you're right there, Karen. In fact, that really tainted our victory. We thought we won because we were great. Then some senators say, well, actually we were given how many, 50 million or something. It's not 50 million in cash, I think, but it's project. You know.
It's like project. It's like
50 million
PDAF.
pesos.
It was the PDAF.
Like
Yeah.
pork
If not
barrel.
mistaken,
Whether pork barrel or
Yeah.
cash.
Yeah.
For me, oh my God, I thought we won this fair and square. And then here comes this privileged speech. Yeah, you're right, Karen. It must not be about you, Senator Judge. It must be about the Filipino people.
Yes, and on the merits of the case. like
And
you
on the
said.
merits of
Yeah.
the case.
Well, Attorney Mike, I think marami na tayo na pag-usapan, pero bitin, no? Sana
Yeah.
next time we can have you here,
Yeah.
especially
Yeah.
when the trial progresses.
Exactly. And you know, partner, what struck me the most in this discussion, no, and it's so glad really that we have no less than Congressman Neri here, is talagang siguro, pag talagang tignan natin to, kasi this ongoing drama, if I may call it a drama, this will really see how strong our institutions are and how
Yes.
strong our loyalty or fidelity to the Constitution is, di ba? Kaya nga, talagang dapat sundan natin ang proseso at tignan natin kung ano man ang resulta, at least dumaan sa tamang proseso.
You're right,
Oo.
you're right.
Ang impeachment kasi sa ating pananaw, partner, political talaga yan in nature. Kaya nung panahon ni Bill Clinton, when he was impeached, but he was being tried already in the Senate, what happened there was the Republicans and the Democrats, just even if the evidence was strong, especially on the perjury side,
Voted along
sabi
party
nila,
lines.
nag-decide na sila na, alam mo, wag na natin to ituloy. Remember? Kasi it weakened the American presidency. How can an American president who is supposed to be the global world leader negotiate with other countries if he is he was impeached and might be convicted in the Senate?
Yes.
Kaya talaga at the end of the day,
Are we talking about the Clinton impeachment?
Oo, talagang politika siya, but I agree, during the hearing itself, the process, kailangan talagang na may rules.
Yes, I agree with that, Attorney Mike. You see, who is at trial here? It's not merely the Vice President who
Correct.
is at trial here. It's the accountability mechanisms and the checks and balance of the entire government, whether this thing still works or not. So baka akala nila it's just the Vice President who's being tried here. No, under trial dito ang tingin ng taong bayan whether we can trust the mechanism of accountability or not. Whether or not this accountability mechanism for impeachable officials can be depended on by the people on issues na hindi na nila kayang i-hold accountable because these are impeachable officials. So for me, yes, dapat malinaw yan sa mga senador, sa congressman at sa Malacanang that this is not merely about the Vice President on trial, but this is about the accountability mechanism of this government which is on trial here.
Okay, and on that note, dapat yan yung next debate issue na, no?
Siguro kailangan
Should
to
we
part 1,
amend
part 2, part 3, no?
the impeachment or abolish it? But yeah, we'll shall see. But thank you so much, Congressman Neri. Very insightful discussion today.
And the impeachment process, as you know, has challenges, not just for public officials, but the institutions that hold them accountable.
And that's why conversations like this matter. Hope our viewers can come away better informed about how the Constitution works and how it must be respected. This is Abugado. Good night.
Good night.